Akira Kurosawa's Ikiru is a film about a man who wasted his life. That's probably the quickest possible summary of the film, but I don't think it's the most accurate. Not because it doesn't describe the story correctly, but because by the end, the film turns its gaze away from the protagonist and onto us. Watanabe is a man living in a never-ending cycle of meaningless motions. He's a mid-level bureaucrat who has worked at Tokyo City Hall for most of his life. Over the years, he's made it to the position of Public Affairs Section Chief, a job consisting of taking papers, stamping them, and passing them from one side of the desk to the other. Every day he sits at his desk, beyond which there is a big table. Around it sit a group of other bureaucrats, all doing the exact same thing he is. A group of mothers comes in with a request for the city to build a playground over the site of a leaking cesspool. Something unobjectionable and relatively simple, the exact sort of thing the local government should be for. Instead, they are sent from one department to the next, each one passing the responsibility somewhere else. The film isn't exactly subtle about what it's saying about Watanabe and his job. In fact, the narrator comes in to literally spell it out. I think the narration in Ikiru is worth pointing out, because it seems superfluous, as if it's just reiterating what we're already seeing. But in reality, in addition to underscoring Watanabe's tragic obliviousness through voicing what almost seems like his own suppressed thoughts, by directly addressing our perception of Watanabe and thus breaking down the fourth wall, it situates us personally in this world, rather than leaving us as passive observers. Keep this in mind, it will come up again.
とにかく後一月で30年間無欠勤の記録が作れたんですからね。
The movie picks up on the first day Watanabe misses work. He's going to the doctor for an X-ray. What follows isn't much of a revelation. The movie actually opens up by letting us know his condition before he's even aware of it.
これはこの物語の主人公の胃袋である。噴門部に胃がんの兆候が見えるが、本人はまだそれを知らない。
He goes home to tell his son and daughter-in-law, but when they arrive, he overhears them talking.
私たち2人だけが住むうちだったら4、50万までは経つんでしょう。お父さんの退職金担保にしてなんとかなんないのかしら。
親父の退職金6、70万にはなるね。だって親父だって退職金や貯金まで墓の中まで持ってく気はないだろ。
And so instead he sets out to do the only thing he can think of, to spend the money before he dies.
つい2、3日前までは自分の金で酒を飲んだこともありません。
At the bar, he meets a novelist, a self-described bohemian type.
人生を楽しむことってね、これ本当に人間の義務ですよ。
The novelist decides to take Watanabe along with him for the night, to show him how to live life through the material.
私はね、このあなたのために喜んでベストウェルスの役を務めますね。
In another film, the novelist might be a sort of Faustian guide, a fast-living devil taking whoever he can down with him. But that's not the case in Ikiru. Rather, the novelist seems a lost but relatively sympathetic figure, and his attempt to help is genuine. But Watanabe fails to stave off his sorrow. Having wasted his life in meaningless work, he can't help but recognize the lack of meaning in seeking pure pleasure. What's more, he can't stop his sorrow from spilling over and onto others, those who still have enough time left to ignore the lack of meaning. And so, instead of delivering Watanabe from sadness, the novelist joins him in his sorrow. The next day, Watanabe runs into his young co-worker, Toyo.
How muchですか?
今後そのうちだが。
私役者辞めたいんです。
Having only worked at City Hall for a few months, it didn't take her long to recognize the sort of life working there brings about. Seeing her stockings are worn through, Watanabe takes her to buy new ones, and then out to dinner.
誰だかわかる？ぬるぬるしてつかみどころのない人。係長の大野さんや。
This is the first time in the film we see him smiling. After this, he continues meeting up with her. At first, she goes along with it, but as time goes on, she's progressively less and less willing to do so.
とにかくもうこんなことよしましょうよ。なんだか不自然だわ。
しかし、では今晩だけ。
Watanabe hasn't told her about his condition, but in his desperation, he has essentially started leeching life off of her.
またそんな顔して。
He becomes a kind of parasite to her inner desire for living. In finally letting her know about his condition, he's likewise desperately trying to hold on to her, to hold on to life.
つまり君はどうしてそんなに活気があるのか。全くその活気がある。
ただこんなもん作ってるだけよ。
But it is precisely through her refusal to stay in this pointless state, the same instinct that saved her from wasting her life at City Hall, that Watanabe is finally made to understand.
こんなもんでも作ってると楽しいわよ。私これ作り出してから日本中の赤ん坊と仲良しになってるような気がするの。
無理じゃない。ただやる気になれば。
Watanabe resolves his remaining months to finishing the project proposed by the Women's Association, the building of the playground.
今日中に報告書を何とか一つが。
課長、それは少し無理だと思いますが。
やる気になれば。
それから5ヶ月、この物語の主人公は死んだ。
This is the last piece of narration in the film. Watanabe succeeds in building the playground, and he dies right after, swinging on one of the swings. At this point, though Watanabe's story will still be filled in, it has officially concluded. It is a beautiful scene, and undoubtedly the most iconic image of the film, but it isn't the final scene. During the funeral reception, we hear about the hurdles Watanabe had to jump through to get the playground built. But the story is no longer being told from Watanabe's perspective. Rather, it's through the recollections of his co-workers. Flashbacks to his final months come up as they argue over whether the playground was really built because of Watanabe.
市役所の人間のくせに市民課長が公園を作れるなんて考えるのはおかしいよ。
They argue it was a joint effort, that it is impossible for one person to do such a thing, and it was just by chance that things came together to work out the way they did. It is only once the bosses leave the wake that Watanabe's co-workers, slowly, one by one, come to admit the truth. That it was, in fact, Watanabe who built that playground. And what is more, that it was the sort of thing they all hoped they would be doing working at City Hall once.
どうせクズですよ。でもね、役所にだっていい人間入ってくるんですよ。
And so they begin drinking and thinking about Watanabe. And as they get drunker, they rave about his sacrifice and how they will follow in his footsteps. How they are all tired of being idlers and pushovers and want to create real change, and how tomorrow will be the day they start. The next day, everyone is back at work, stamping their papers, passing them from one side of the table to the other.
課長、木崎町で溢れ出た下水の水がそのまま隣の高尾町のどこか。お話の件は。
Had Ikiru been a naive film, it might have had Watanabe finding his purpose in something ethereal, in giving everything to charity or becoming a monk. But he doesn't do that. Instead, he creates something tangible and lasting. The film doesn't disregard the importance of legacy, of material things, and of the real joy they bring into the world. It only warns of making them the central focus of our lives. And if Ikiru had been a cynical film, it might have been a lament over the dysfunction of bureaucracy, and how one good man's achievements get swallowed up by a swarm of vultures. These things do happen, but ultimately they don't matter. Toyo, the only character in the film that instinctively understands what a good life is, doesn't choose her job because it brings her personal prestige or credit, but because she sees the value in the tiny, positive impact she has on the world. In its last moments, Ikiru turns towards us, the audience, asking, how many times have you gotten drunk, be it of alcohol or ego, and talked about all the great things you were gonna do, and the plans you had, and how tomorrow will be the day that you begin to make them come true? What happened to all that? And what will you do with the brief life you have left? My name is Samuel Mračka. If you enjoyed this and would like more film analysis to come your way in the future, consider subscribing and leaving a like on this essay. For now, thank you very much for watching.